All right, so we are looking at missing data. If we're in SPSS, you can easily just breeze through here and notice here's a piece of information that's missing. If it's a lot of data, a lot of rows and columns, this is going to get more cumbersome. So there are some tricks to this. Here's another one. And first we need to really get to know what your data is. If this is a survey, when you design your survey, let's say for your research projects or dissertation, if you're using Survey Monkey or Qualtrics, there are options in those platforms to say that each item is required. And maybe you have some demographic questions that aren't required, so you could leave those open. But if it's an actual survey, let's say there's 12 items on the survey, you want to require that all those items are completed. Otherwise, the survey would be incomplete. So in this case, that could be what happened. If this is a survey, maybe somebody skipped over a question, they didn't like it, or they were running out of time, so they just skipped through it. Other times, if this is data, let's say from a doctor's office, or in this case, it's university data. So it depends on who's managing the data. If they haven't completed all of the cells in the spreadsheet as they're going through, then we're going to have missing data. So we need to decide, is this important or not? Now, to do this, I personally, before I put things in SPSS, I like to get my hands on it in Excel. So I'm going to show you that here. You can go to File, Export, and Excel. Make sure it's going to an Excel file and figure out where it's going on your computer and hit save. The reason I do this is that you can then use filters to get into it. The filters are super helpful to understand what's missing. So I'm going to pull this open. And okay, so here you have your data in Excel. Like I said, it's so much easier to work with in Excel, get it cleaned up. I like to have a gold standard of data if I can, and then we can put it in SPSS. So I'm going to walk you through this, and that way you'll know, especially when you're doing your own dissertation, you'll know I would start in Excel. So first I want to go up to data, hit filter. That gives you these options here to see if you have any blanks. So once you get so far in the data, you're going to notice some blanks. So here it's called null. We'll do that. Okay, so there's one line. And typically what I'll do with this is actually highlight it. I know these are different instructions from what Dr. Carter did. You'll find out with statistics, I talk to my clients and students all the time. It's sort of like cooks in the kitchen. Everybody has their own way to bake a cake. And the end result is that we all get a cake. So, so the reason I do this is I'm a bit old school. I like to get into it, understand what I'm working with, and understand, what's happening. So I will go through this and figure out where all these are. The reason I highlight it instead of just going through it and deleting it is I want to decide how many rows of data do I have that are actually not right. Now, obviously, if this is huge, you might not want to do it like this. And we have other options in SPSS to remove cases listwise or pairwise. But for now, this is, like I said, what I call the gold standard. So I like to do this if at all possible. It just removes any question whatsoever about, is there an issue with our data? So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'm going to pause it while I'm doing it. Okay, so now that I'm finished going through it to see where the the null or the blank spots are popping up, then we can start to really analyze it and understand what's going on. A couple of other things that popped up that I just don't think that we always get a chance to see in SPSS, but when we're working with the data like this, it's helpful because you really get to know your data. So I know a lot of people will want to completely do everything in SPSS, and that's fine. But personally, I like to have it in Excel so I can work with it, get to know it, understand it, manipulate it where I need to, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's sort by color, and then you can see we have quite a few rows with data. So 63, because there's a header row, 63 rows of data have some sort of missing data. Now we can also see that over in SPSS. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, if you're in SPSS, then you go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and Frequencies. And then let me reset this. I want to move all of my variables over. So to do that quickly, you have the top one highlighted, scroll to the bottom, hit Shift, and click that next one at the bottom, and then scoot them all over. Then go to Statistics, and we want, let's see, min and max included, and hit Continue, and OK. Now this shows you, let's go back to the top. All of your missing variables, you have a couple of ways to see it. You have missing variables like here's one, here's one, here's one. It also lists it for you with what the actual ratings are. It just depends if this is a Likert scale or it means something else, but it shows you. So for the consent, it was just ones, those were all filled out. ELI ones, no missing data. We go down to ELI 3, there's missing data. So we need to decide, well, what is this ELI 3? Doesn't matter. As we go down, you're going to see a few other things. So missing data here, missing data there. Now what, again, this is up to you. If this is good enough for you, perfect. Personally, I like to have it over in Excel so I can make some decisions there. There's something I want to show you here that I was surprised to find in the Excel spreadsheet. And you can see it's a little bit hard to find it in SPSS unless you know what you're looking for. So let me just pop over to Excel real quick, and I think this will be easier for you to see it. So if I'm just scrolling down, now this is my clean data. This is what I call my gold standard data. Everything looks good. There's no numbers that are really jumping out at me. Everything's looking pretty good. However, I'm going to scoot over. So that's the first bunch of rows or columns rather. Now here's one. So 11. I don't know if 11 is the right answer or 10 is the right answer. It could be. Here's 100. That's interesting because everything else in this column doesn't look like it's more than a single digit. So this is where I think having it in Excel is helpful because there could be some human error here, maybe where we fat fingered numbers or maybe this is accurate. We would have to, again, know our data. So this is gender. Are we using 99s and 100s for a certain reason, in addition to zeros and ones? Typically zeros and ones are they're known as dummy variables. You code zeros as one thing and ones as another thing. So I would expect to see male and female there. Now we might have something else going on here. If we look at age, there's 10s and 11s. That could just be age ranges. Again, we'd have to get more familiar with the data. Anyway, just something that popped out, and I thought, well, if we find that we have outliers, this could be something that's going to present as an outlier because it's different, it's unique. Okay, so let's look at the next piece of this. So back in our spreadsheet, now we need to make some decisions. So if we just got rid of all of these rows of data, again, that's what I would call my gold standard, but we need to decide, is this good enough? So we have 63, remember there's a header. So we have 63 rows of data that has some missing information. In total, so 63 rows, remember that, in total we have 350 rows of data. So if I put 350 rows and 63, and I divide that, that's 18%. Now going to the guidelines that Dr. Carter presented, pairwise deletion is ideal when there's more than 15% of data. So in this case, Pairwise deletion would be best. You still have some information to deal with though. So we can do pairwise deletion. If you are working with me on your dissertation, you will find out I like to color code things. So I'm going to come over here. I just copied that host sheet. I'm going to save that because that's our original data. Now this is what I'm going to call my gold standard of data. Whoops, not that one. That's our percentage. So let's delete that. We know we have 18% of our information. Let's rename this one. I'm going to call this gold standard. And simply, I know it's painful, especially when it's your data for your dissertation and you've worked so hard to get it. So this is why we want to set it up good on the front end. Remember that when you're doing your dissertation or any research projects, it's important that we set up SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics correctly on the front end so we don't have missing data on the back end. So we're going to delete this. Okay. So this is what I would call gold standard. There is absolutely no missing data whatsoever in this spreadsheet. However, it has now reduced our number from 350 down to 288. Well, you might say, okay, is that enough data? And it really depends on what you're going to do with your data. So if you just have a couple of variables that you're doing correlation testing or regression testing, then absolutely. In the hair book, and I'll find that reference for you. In the hair book, it says you want 15 to 20 people per predictor variable or independent variable. So if I'm only going to have a few independent variables, we have plenty of data here. It also says in the hair book, they want at least 100 people per study or 100 participants per study. So again, we have plenty of data here. We know it's good, solid data. The other part with that missing data is if people are taking surveys, then you start to question, well, if they missed the data, were they accurate with the other data that they gave you? So that gets into the reliability of the data. But anyway, so you have some options here. So this is our original data set. It's everything. This is our gold standard. So depends on what we're going to do with it, what our actual tests are. But I want you to see that. Those are options. Now going back over to SPSS. When we run our test, we have options to run them as either listwise or pairwise. So listwise means we get rid of everything, just like we did with the gold standard. You just don't have to manipulate it, on your own in Excel. SPSS does that for you. It actually keeps the data in this original data view, but when you run your analysis and you select listwise deletion, it will, I'll show you here. It will give you an option to get rid of everything. So I have two screens. If you don't have two screens, I highly recommend it. Yeah, okay. I just have to find it. Another thing that you might have noticed is some of the instructions that you're seeing in the class may not be completely accurate anymore because SPSS version 29 is slightly different than SPSS version 28. But okay, so if we go in the options button, it gives you this exclude cases listwise or exclude cases pairwise. So if we have done the work and we've decided, okay, we need to have all of the information for what we're doing, and we want the gold standard, we can click listwise. If we decide, well, it really doesn't matter, let's say if they listed gender or some other variable, we're just really looking at maybe financial aid and graduation rate in this case, then we can remove cases pairwise and it will still include everything as long as that information is included. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay, so for the sake of good order, I want to show one more thing before we move on to outliers. So if you go to Analyze Descriptive Statistics, the last time we did frequencies, this time I want to do descriptives. And let me put all that back over there. So if you move everything, again, you can hit Shift and click on it and move it over. Go to options. You've got mean, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum. Hit continue and okay. So where before we were having trouble seeing those scores that were 100 or 99, now that's going to be easier for us. So we can see we have a few that are questionable. This would help us narrow it down so that we can get into the information ahead of time and figure out if this is accurate or not. And that might cause you to, go in and change things. Maybe that really should have been a 1, and you can verify that with other information. Maybe you can verify what these other numbers are and decide ahead of time, just so you can clean it up ahead of time, especially when you're working with data that people are manually inputting into a database. It's very common that there's what we call fat fingers, where we've hit the wrong button, or we've put in a letter even instead of a number. So that will help you clean it up ahead of time. Now, as far as your assignment goes for missing data, what I'd like to see is the report for the frequency table. Again, that's descriptive statistics and frequencies. Once you get into frequencies, reset that, come in here, move all your information over, go to statistics, and you want min and max. Right here, just min and max. So that's going to give you this, and it gives you each individual variable at a time. And then the other one that I want to see is analyze descriptive statistics. Descriptives, and that's the one that we just did with mean, standard deviation, min, and max. That's the one table that, well, I'll just hit okay. That's the one table that gives you all of your variables at one glance and helps you to see it. So those are the two things I'd like to see for your missing variables in this assignment. Thank you.